everyone. I'm glad you could join us tonight. My name is Christine Francoeur. Unfortunately, I do not have a doctor in front of my name, although Maya gives it generously. So maybe in another life, Maya, you know something about me. I'm your Wellness Through Mindfulness host tonight. I'm one of the teachers and part of the committee for WTM. So if you haven't been to one of our events in the past, we're a local group dedicated to bringing the teachings of mindfulness and other relevant topics. So if you've attended our events before, welcome back. And if you're new, we're so glad that you could join us tonight. Our ongoing thanks to the Calgary Library for providing us this opportunity to continue our programs online. You know, our bi-monthly program started over 5 years ago at the Shaganappy Community Center, and of course, with the pandemic, having the opportunity to continue hosting these events through the Calgary Library has really been a great gift for us, and we are very grateful. So if you're interested in maybe some of our previous events or a summary of some of the talks, you'll find so much or so many great pieces of information at our website, which is thebreathproject.org. And that will link to the Wellness Through Mindfulness, where you'll find all sorts of great resources. And speaking of great events, you can mark your calendar for the next event, which is Thursday, December 1st, with Dr. Alan Donsky. And Dr. Donsky will be sharing how to rest in every moment, a mindful way to the harmony of silence. So we've had Alan present with us many times. He's part of our committee here at the WTM, so always a real crowd favorite. Our last event for the year will be on December 16th, actually with our speaker tonight, with Dr. Mahoney. And the topic for that night will be viewing the pandemic through the lens of Buddha's teachings. This talk will explore the challenges of the COVID pandemic from the perspective of the Four Noble Truths. So as a reminder, our events are here online, just that first and third Thursday of every month. So if you'd like, you can always pop onto our website and you can sign up for our newsletter, and we can keep you in the loop about what's coming with a link that allows you to register. But you can always just pop on to the Calgary Library website as well, put mindfulness in the search box, and all of the upcoming events will come up. But tonight, we welcome Dr. Anne Mahoney. She'll be taking us through the cultivation of compassion and finding those skills that we need to navigate the challenges of COVID with ease and grace. So Dr. Anne Mahoney is a clinical psychologist in private practice here in Calgary. Her clinical focus includes working with individuals, couples, and groups where issues related to the past or current trauma have limited clients' potential. Her focus is to help clients heal from their traumatic experiences and, where appropriate, help clients understand the ways in which family of origin dynamics and other past experiences continue to impact their life. Her clinical approach involves integrating mindful awareness techniques, equine facilitated wellness therapy, and trauma-related exercises where appropriate. In addition to her wonderful clinical practice, Anne has over 35 years experience with mindfulness, which is actually Vipassana meditation. She's studied under both Asian and North American trained teachers, and she's been teaching within the Theravada School of Buddhism for the past 19 years. She currently leads both an online and bi-weekly meditation group and a Dhamma study group. She also conducts virtual and in-person residential and non-residential meditation retreats, and has a website, and we'll be posting it later in the chat if you'd like to read more about her work and as well as her meditation offerings. But Dr. Mahoney, it is my pleasure to meet you, and we are thrilled to have you leading us tonight. So welcome. I'm anticipating a really great evening.
Thank you, Christine. It's nice to meet you too, and thank you very much for those kind words. I would just like to begin by acknowledging my gratitude to the library and to Wellness Through Mindfulness for asking me to be part of this program. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for people to take the meditation practices that I'm going to talk about into your daily life and make them part of how we thrive rather than just survive the current situation. I'm going to begin tonight by talking a little bit about two different types of meditation practice that are very common in the Theravada school, and then I'll relate those back to the current situation with COVID, and we'll end my portion of the program with a guided meditation. So in very sort of simple, straightforward terms, there are two types of meditation. There are two streams of meditation in the Theravada school. We often refer to them as the two wings of a bird, both being required, of course. So one is mindfulness and concentration, which I'm not going to talk much about tonight, although that's a very important part of thriving in life, is our ability to be present. The other wing is what I refer to in English maybe as the heart practices. The Pali name is the Brahma Viharas, or the divine abodes. And there are 4 of these practices: loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. In the teachings of the Buddha, it said that these are the only 4 emotions that are worth having. Although technically they're not actually emotions, they're more accurately described, I think, as attitudes of mind. So I'm going to briefly explain each one of them for those of you who may not be familiar with them, and then talk about how they relate, right, to the struggle and the stress related to the pandemic. So loving kindness is an attitude of love and acceptance that has no strings attached to it. It is given freely. It's not asking for anything in return. Traditionally, it's described as the love that a parent would have for a child. It is unconditional. So it's not because I want something from you. It's not because I need to be nice to you. It is heartfelt acceptance, kindness, care, and concern. And the object is to cultivate this quality of mind for all beings, whether we like the person, know the person, or dislike the person, right? And not just human beings, but for all beings. It is a practice that the Buddha engaged in himself a lot. He originally taught it to monks who are having high levels of anxiety and panic, not too different from how we might be feeling these days during the pandemic. And it's a very beneficial practice. Related to the loving kindness practice is the compassion practice. In the Theravada school, compassion is a complex thing. It's not based on fixing things. It's not based on making things better. It's simply the understanding that everybody suffers. It's the capacity to see the things we don't like from the perspective of the other person suffering, and from the perspective that I'm suffering. It's very important to have compassion for ourselves. And it's very important to cultivate the ability to have compassion for everybody else. So there is no enemy. There's no me versus you. It moves us very far away, all right, from, survival mode. And it moves us into an integrated, interdependent state where there's the understanding that we all suffer, expressed differently by different people. Suffering can look like anger. It can look like withdrawal. It can look like cruelness. It can look like fear. It can look like sadness and depression. But when we can understand that other people suffer, we have the capacity then to hold them in our heart, to recognize that they're just like us, that we're all suffering. The third Brahmavihara is called appreciative joy, and it's the capacity to delight in other people's success. not to be jealous, not to be envious, not to be annoyed that it's them and not me, but just to hold in our heart a great deal of happiness for them. This particular Brahmavihara allows us to access the feeling of joy, which is a feeling that's very hard for many people. And it again takes us far away from the comparisons, the evaluations that happen when I think of myself as an individual and you're a different individual. It just moves us into a space where joy is shared with everybody. And then the last Brahmavihara is referred to as equanimity. And in a practical sense, what that means is that our mind is not perturbed. We are not reactive. Our mind is capable of remaining still and peaceful, calm, alert, and we respond appropriately to whatever situation arises. It's not being zoned out, full of bliss, right? We're very present and very aware, but we're not reacting, we're responding. This is a difficult quality, and it's particularly difficult at this point in our history, because it has been very, very stressful on everybody getting through the pandemic. The last 20 months and has been hard, and we don't know when it's going to get easy, and the constant changes, the opening up and closing down, etc., the unknownness, the uncertainty, the confusion is very hard. The isolation, the regulations that we're expected to follow, the very fact that there are regulations that we're supposed to follow, these things cause a great deal of stress. And as the stress goes on and on and on, it wears us down so that people become perhaps more anxious, perhaps more annoyed, frustrated. And over time, that anxiety and frustration grow. Some people will be experiencing more like panic attacks, and other people will be experiencing disproportionate anger for what's happening. Our moods can change in a matter of seconds. As the saying goes, we can go from 0 to 100 in one breath. We become highly reactive, highly impatient, distrustful, confused. Our thinking can become either obsessive in style or very locked in, very black and white, very rigid. We cling to things to try to find some degree of safety, even though they might not be things that we would think of under other circumstances. So all of these are examples of what's happening to the mind when there is highly elevated stress levels. And when the stress starts to become chronic, which certainly it has when we look at the span of the pandemic so far. What does this reflect in terms of our biology? What it reflects is that the aspect of our nervous system that regulates the fight and flight, our sympathetic nervous system, is overactivated, and we are no longer able, right, to balance it with the parasympathetic nervous system. We can't calm down. We don't mean to get so angry, it just happens. And it takes longer and longer. We try to calm down, but it's really hard. If we used to go to the gym to work out, we can't do that. Some days we can do that and some days we can't do that, and it gets all confusing about what the regulations are, etc., etc. So the normal coping mechanisms that may have worked for people before the pandemic may not be available, or they may not work anymore. And believe it or not, that's where the heart practices come in. Because the heart practices actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the part of the nervous system that allows us to rest and to relax. It's the part of the nervous system that makes it easier to connect with ourselves and with people, to feel love and joy, to feel peaceful and content, to be happy, to be energized in a sort of positive way. If by some magic we woke up tomorrow morning and the pandemic was over, there was not a single case of COVID anywhere on the planet, there's no guarantee that our nervous systems would settle down. The excessive activation for many of us of the sympathetic nervous system isn't just magically going to go away in my fantasy of no more COVID. We actively have to do something to engage the parasympathetic nervous system. We actively have to do something to move our mind into a place where it's at rest, where it's possible to cultivate the love and the peace and the joy and the connection that we all crave. And these meditations will help us do that. However, they will only help us do that if we allow ourselves to develop what is now called the felt sense. So typically these meditations can be taught by having a series of phrases, may I be well, may I be happy, and we repeat them over and over again. But the phrases are only meant to prime the pump. They're just meant to get us started. The goal of all four of the meditations related to the Brahma-Viharas are to help us develop the feeling of love, unconditional positive regard, the feeling of compassion and understanding, the feeling of joy for ourselves and for other people, other beings, and the feeling of peace and stillness that arises when the mind is able to just rest and be non-reactive. So we have to feel these in our body. We have to know them as a sensation. And when we can do that, and it is doable, it's definitely doable. And when we can do it, even for a moment, they will protect us from all of the reactivity, all of the negativity, all of the negative stress, the pressure, the fear, the anger, the immobilization, the loss of interest. These will protect us from those because, all right, they are engaging a different part of our nervous system, the part of our nervous system that allows us to be well. Now, I don't want to give the impression that our sympathetic nervous system isn't important. It's very important, but it was never designed to be on continuously. It's meant to be activated when it needs to be and then to settle down. And that's what's not happening for many, many people now. So by developing or growing a regular practice with one or all of the Brahma-Viharas, right, you're working at helping to activate the part of your nervous system that protects you from being reactive, from being negative, from being scared, from being enraged, and the part of your nervous system that protects you from going sort of numb and dissociated, where you're just living life, going through the motions, but not really being engaged emotionally or spiritually at all. I think that's a pretty important thing to know. And I think that it is definitely a kind of meditation practice that is worth cultivating, and that it will carry you far. It's not just useful for sitting on the cushion. When we can develop the felt sense of any of the Brahma Viharas, we carry that felt sense with us. And it helps to make the world a kinder, more accepting and loving place. And it makes our individual lives much easier. Life seen through the view of the Brahma Viharas, all right, is not a world that's out to get me. It's not competitive. I'm not at risk. It's a world that's kind and generous and considerate. So let's try to practice this. So what I'm going to do tonight is a guided Brahma Vihara practice. I'm going to speak about each of the Brahma Viharas. I'm going to talk about ourselves. I'm going to talk about various categories of beings. The traditional categories would be the people who help us with our meditation and on our spiritual journeys, our families, friends, and loved ones, people that we don't know or whom we have neutral feelings for. They're just people that are in our lives, but we don't really think about them. People that we don't like, that we're upset with. And then all people, all beings everywhere. So we'll go through all of those categories. I will talk about how the Brahma Viharas protect us. I've mentioned that already. How they heal us and how they guide us. So let me just explain those last two before we do the meditation. They heal us because when we can cultivate a felt sense, it heals the residual trauma that we carry in our bodies. It brings us to a place of safety where we're not responding from past fears, past traumas. So it really does allow those things to dissolve. And it guides us because it gives us a framework by which we can live life so that we continue to be responsive and don't fall back into that reactive mode that happens when the sympathetic nervous system is overactivated. So I will begin the meditation by ringing a Tibetan bowl. And I will end the meditation the same way, just so you know what that sound is when it happens. So I invite all of you now, please, to just take a moment, adjust your position, get comfortable. And we will begin the meditation. I invite you now to just bring your awareness into your body and be aware of any aches or pains, any discomfort. Adjust your body as you need to. Breathe into those areas and just allow yourself to relax. You may close your eyes, you may soften your gaze, whichever you are comfortable with. And just take a moment to take a few deep breaths. And just set the intention to let the stress in your body loosen. Just to let your mind and your body to begin to relax. And now bring your awareness to your heart center. It's the area in the middle of your chest. If you like, you may place a hand there. But just be aware of whatever feelings or sensations that are present there. No judgments, no stories, no narratives. Just allow whatever is there to be there. just accepting your heart center exactly as it is. And now allow whatever feelings of peacefulness or stillness, feelings of acceptance or understanding, feelings of ease or well-being, any feelings like that that may be present, just allow them to flow from your heart center to fill your entire being, radiating down to the soles of your feet, radiating up to the top of your head, completely surrounding you and infusing you with loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. And just take a moment to breathe in that love, that understanding and acceptance, the joy and delight, and the stillness and peacefulness. So that you're completely surrounded by the Brahma-Viharas. So that the Brahma-Viharas can heal, protect, and guide you in everything you do. So that you may radiate these four qualities, these four attitudes of mind inward to yourself, and outward to all beings, with every intention, every thought, every sound, and every action. And so now from this field of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, bring to mind all of those beings who have helped you with your meditation or your spiritual practice. And wish for each of them the same love and kindness that you wish for yourself. Wish for them the same acceptance and understanding that you wish for yourself. Wish for them the same ease and well-being, the same peacefulness and contentment that you wish for yourself. Welcome these individuals into your heart center, sharing with them your love, your compassion, your joy, and your equanimity, so that they too are infused and surrounded by the Brahma-Viharas, so that they too are protected, healed, and guided by loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. And now extend your loving kindness, your compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity to your family, your friends, your loved ones. Allowing these individuals to arise in your mind's eye. Wishing for them as you wish for yourself. love and kindness, understanding and acceptance, joy and happiness, peacefulness and contentment, ease and well-being. Welcome these individuals into your heart center, sharing with them your loving kindness, your compassion, your appreciative joy, and your equanimity, so that they too are surrounded by and infused with the Brahma-Viharas, so that they too are healed, protected, and guided by the Brahma-Viharas. And now extend your loving kindness, your compassion, your appreciative joy, and your equanimity to beings who you have neutral feelings for, people you don't know, as well as the people you may see routinely in your life, but for whom you have little or no connection. Just faces on the street, faces on the Zoom call. Just allow a selection of these individuals to arise in your mind's eye, and wish for them as you wish for yourself. Love and kindness, acceptance and understanding, joy and happiness, peacefulness and contentment, ease and well-being. Welcome these individuals into your heart center. Share with them your love and kindness, your compassion and understanding, your acceptance, your joy and your happiness, your peacefulness and contentment, so that they too are surrounded by and infused with the Brahma-Viharas, so that they too are healed, protected, and guided by the Brahma-Viharas. And now extend your loving kindness, your compassion, your understanding, your appreciative joy, your even-mindedness to an individual or a group of individuals with whom you struggle. For the moment, set aside the struggle and wish for each of these individuals the same love and kindness that you wish for yourself, the same acceptance and understanding that you wish for yourself. the same joy and happiness that you wish for yourself, and the same peacefulness and contentment, same ease and well-being that you wish for yourself. Welcome these individuals into your heart center and share with them your love and your kindness, your understanding and your compassion, your joy and happiness, your peacefulness and contentment, so that these individuals are also surrounded by and infused with the Brahma-Viharas. So these individuals with whom you struggle are also healed, protected, and guided by the Brahma-Viharas. And now extend your loving kindness, your compassion, your appreciative joy, and your equanimity as far afield as you can imagine. Wishing that all beings, without exception, are surrounded by and infused with loving kindness, understanding and acceptance, joy and happiness, peacefulness and contentment. Wishing that all beings everywhere, without exception, radiate inwards to themselves and outwards to the world and beyond. Loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity in everything that they do, with every intention, every thought, every sound, and every action. So that all beings everywhere radiate the Brahma-Viharas inwards to themselves and outwards to all other beings. And now bring your awareness back to yourself, back to your heart center. And once again, just be aware of whatever sensations or feelings are present there. Take note of any feelings of kindness, of acceptance, understanding, compassion, or feelings of happiness, of joy, feelings of being grounded, peacefulness, and contentment. And just anchor any of those feelings that you may be aware of. Anchor them in your heart center. Just know that they are always there. And now bringing your awareness to your breath. Breathe in loving kindness for yourself. And breathe out loving kindness for all beings. Breathe in compassion for your own suffering, for your own struggles, your own stress. And breathe out compassion for the suffering, the struggling, the stress of all beings. Breathe in joy for your own well-being, for your own happiness. And breathe out joy for the happiness and well-being of all beings. Breathe in peacefulness and contentment, even-mindedness for yourself. And breathe out peacefulness and contentment and even-mindedness for all beings. May all beings everywhere rest in the Brahma-Viharas, and may all beings share with each other loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. I will just end by saying that, if you want to start to practice any aspect of the Brahma-Vihara meditations on your own, you can just pick one of the four. Pick the one that resonates with you the most, or that feels easier to start with. And remember that the words are not important. The felt sense is what's important. The words are helpful at the beginning, maybe to just keep the mind focused on what you're doing. All of the heart practices are concentration practices. They're not mindfulness practices. And so the words give it some structure to make it a bit easier, but that's all. What you're looking for is the felt sense. And when you have a moment where you're aware of the felt sense, then that is what you should make the object of your awareness. You should stay with the felt sense for as long as it lasts. It might just be a couple seconds, that's okay. And go back to the words. And over time, the felt sense will get stronger. And it will be easier just to incline the mind, right, to the felt sense. So thank you for your attention and your participation. And we can move on now to questions and answers.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful practice. Beautiful practice. I'm just going to say a reminder to everyone that you can put your questions into the chat. And we would love to hear actually even how you're feeling after the practice. Someone right now has even just said, is felt sense the same as feeling sensations?
Yes, I would say so. That you're aware in your body, right, of some kind of sensation that we can give an emotional name to. So, that feel of peacefulness or the feel of joy is what's important. So it's the same thing.
So when we're in the midst of, those moments, like you were saying, where the sympathetic nervous system is so reactive and, we're probably not thinking clearly, we're, whatever you, like you listed off several things that could be happening, whether we're angry or frustrated, or we're just in a state that we find it difficult to return to a practice like this. Is there something that you could suggest to help us remember, to help us bring us back? Like, what would you say?
I'm a big fan of sticky notes. So I would say have lots of sticky notes around your place. Because it is very, very hard to remember in the heat of the moment, right? When the sympathetic nervous system is overactive, we're not thinking about calming down. The first thing would be to breathe, right? To really pay attention to your breathing. So actually, that's a mindfulness, the beginning of a mindfulness practice where you're just bringing your awareness into how you're breathing. You don't have to change the breathing. You can be so annoyed that you're panting, right? And really tight, but just be aware of that. Just by coming back to the present moment, right? It will, right, give you some relief from the reactivity, right? That's triggered by overactive sympathetic nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe you have to go and do something. Maybe you have to move quickly. Maybe you have to distract yourself by reading something, or right, just until it calms down enough. All right, now I could try to have loving kindness for myself, or now I could try to have compassion for the outbursts that I just went through, right? So it's just little small things.
And I would just love to hear your thoughts on cultivating compassion for ourselves. In the midst of something like that, where maybe we did overreact, or there was anger, or, we have regret, and, the difficulty of bringing compassion to ourselves after a moment like that. Like, how do we cultivate compassion for ourselves in our practice?
I think when the Buddha taught about compassion, it wasn't the case that it was the hardest thing in the world to do, but in the West, it does seem to be the hardest thing in the world to do, right? To love ourselves and to have compassion for ourselves. I find it very helpful to remember that, much of our stress reaction is hardwired, right? When our sympathetic nervous system is overactivated, we don't actually have a lot of control, right? We'll say things we don't mean to say. We'll perhaps yell or throw something and not even realize we're doing it until it's done. So I think it's important to remember that. And I think it's important to just accept that it happened. It doesn't make us a bad person. Doesn't mean that we're crazy in the vernacular sense of that word, right? It doesn't mean that we have a mental health problem. It just means we have an overactivated nervous system. So some positive self-talk. Compassion can be a loaded word for people, all right? So just call it something else. Call it being kind to yourself. Call it cutting yourself some slack. Call it giving yourself a break, right? And if it's really hard to do that, imagine how you would be kind to somebody else who just behaved badly. Sometimes that's easier. And then just try to apply it to yourself.
It's true. And you're so right. Like, that kind compassion for ourselves can feel so elusive in those hot button times. But you're right, to actually find the space for ourselves to know that, that we are, that there's so many things coming at us that has contributed to this state over time, that you said, like you said, how do you even be aware of what's really affecting the nervous system when you think of it as a glass that's constantly being dripped into every day until it overflows?
Yeah, there are multiple conditions that produce the result of the nervous system being out of control. Definitely, yeah. And it's not, it's not really realistic in a day-to-day sense to try to be on top of all that. That's not going to happen, right? Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Brahma Vihara around equanimity and how we can better understand how we find that for ourselves?
It is, in terms of daily life, it really is the capacity to not be rattled, right? So, we take in information, we may hear something that we don't want to hear, the restaurants are closing again, or I can't go somewhere without this passport. Now I even the passport isn't good enough. I've got to have this QR code, right? So it's just taking in information, and usually information we don't like, without being reactive to it. We just take it in and accept it. So a non-equanimous mind would be quick to react, quick to blame somebody for this, right? Be resistant to it, not want to do it, right? There'd be a big narrative that would happen. A mind that is capable of having equanimity in that moment is a mind that just takes it in, and there's no resistance to it. It doesn't disturb the mind. There may well be an awareness that I don't like this, or I don't think it's a good idea, right? But there's no reactivity to it. There is just, you accept it is what it is. And then you respond in whatever skillful way you possibly can. Responding skillfully means that we're responding from a place of calmness. We're responding with the understanding that we're all interconnected. This isn't just about me getting what I want, right? This is about what's best for everybody. We're responding with a sense of generosity, right, and patience. There's what we call selfing. There's very little ego involved when the mind is equanimous, right? So it's not about me. It's not about what I need or what I want or how I'm good and you're not, or vice versa. Right? It's just about what's best for everybody concerned.
And that steadiness that you were describing, what would be a good practice for that? What would be a good seated meditation to help us build the steadiness of the mind?
Traditionally, equanimity, the fourth Brahmavihara, develops out of the first three Brahmaviharas. And so to some extent, that is going to always be true, right? But it doesn't mean that we can't make the effort to be less reactive, right? And so any meditation that helps the mind just calm down. So that, that could be walking meditation. That could be going for a stroll in the park, getting out of the city, right? Away from noise and things like that, right? Anything that helps the mind to calm down. And then the tendency to recall the felt sense of what it's like to have a calm mind. Right? Those are two different things. So I have to have the experience of a calm mind. And then the more I can repeat that experience and the more I can recall the felt sense of the experience, all right, the easier it is to get back there.
And so when we think about that and that recalling energy, how does that tie into, setting intentions for ourselves? Because that can be really important. So I think, how would you recommend we could work within that for setting those intentions for ourselves?
Certainly in the Theravada tradition, intention is the most important thing. The consequences to our behavior are the consequences based on the intention of the behavior. So, whether that's speech or action or thought, right? It is the intention that's critical. So, and in my experience, most of the time we don't actually know what our intentions are. We're not, we're already engaging in the behavior before we're really conscious of what an intention is. And unless somebody's asking you about your intention, you may never think about it at all. So when you ask the question, I wonder if what you mean is like an intention, but more like a determination, right? Like you're consciously going to do something. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, because when you speak about what you were talking about with that equanimity, to remind ourselves, right? Like, how do we set the intention to move with that in our daily life?
So in an intention, we have to have an intention before we do anything. All right. So, and there are sometimes we can experience the intention as a felt sense, all right, when the mind is very calm. That probably wouldn't happen in daily life, but it can happen on longer retreats when your mind really does sort of drop into a place of stillness. I think an intention to make a determination about something is different in the sense that we put more energy into it, right? So I'm determined. I put extra effort into. I'm gonna get out of the house today without forgetting anything. I'm determined to get that right. All right. So it's just being conscious. That's all it is. It's just, all right. It's not it's awareness, but it's awareness without, that's not wishy-washy. Well, maybe if I have time, I'll think about it. This happens with even sitting practice. Oh yeah, I'm going to sit this week. Yeah, I'll probably have time on Thursday. Yeah, that's what, yeah. And then, something comes up, the odds of me sitting on Thursday are virtually zero. But if I make a determination that I am getting up 15 minutes early, or I'm taking 15 minutes more at lunchtime, or I'm sitting in my car for 5 minutes before I drive home and I'm going to meditate, right? And there's no wiggle room in my mind. I'm doing this, right? That's the effort. Yeah, it does make a difference. It does make it easier.
Yes, the energy of determination to set our intention to have the practice with, with what we've been discussing with our community and compassion. I really think that that's a beautiful intention. And I know a practice that has served me well is actually journaling, like in the morning, really actually letting out some of the things and resistance that I might be carrying, and then setting my intentions for my day. A healthy reminder of how I want to live my day. So I find that that's been helpful for me as well.
I think there has to always be something positive, I mean, we're not going to keep doing things if they feel too arduous. So, this was a long meditation for those people, for people who don't typically meditate. So, if you're going to try this, try 5 minutes, try the easiest groups of people. All right. Don't pick the hardest enemy that you can imagine, because it's too hard. It's not going to be successful. You're not going to feel good about it, and therefore you're not going to keep doing it, right? So
would you recommend them, when that makes me think of when you suggest that would it be a good recommendation for people who are starting to maybe begin with a guided meditation to help themselves?
To start with the Brahma Viharas?
Or just like generally with the guided meditations to build the practice, when I hear you say that.
Yes, I think so, but I have some thoughts about what kind of guided meditations. Some guided meditations take us into a narrative that's that we're creating, right? So we're very much in our minds. What I try to do with the guided meditations that I practice myself is to help people feel the sensations. So if I'm creating, all right, a narrative in my mind as part of the guided meditation, I just don't know whether that's beneficial. All right. I don't know, because I don't do that. But the kind of guided meditation that helps you start to feel, all right, one of these 4 attitudes of mind, or these 4 heavenly abodes, then yes, absolutely, because it gives the words, or somebody saying the words, gives you your mind enough to hold on to, that you're not as inclined to be darting all over the place in your mind, right? It's sometimes easier. Yeah, for sure.
And knowing like what you said, to be able to find that felt sense,
Yes.
guide you to it, and to note it, and to really feel it and understand it, so that you can lock it in as a new way of being.
Yeah, absolutely. But this takes a great deal of time, and certainly many of my teachers have said over the years that if you need to stick with the words, stick with the words, and you can't get to the felt sense until the conditions are right, and that's different for everybody, right? And so there is a lot of value in the words themselves. Let me just qualify that, because I don't really mean what I just said. The words are useful, but you don't have to have certain particular words. Whatever words work for you that meet the intent, right, of loving kindness or compassion, those words are fine. There's no special words. And even though the words aren't a felt sense, they still keep us in the realm of concepts. It is still building. All right, it's helping the conditions to create themselves so that it will eventually move to a felt sense.
Well, there's a question here for you. How does one create a formal meditation practice of these teachings? Is it separate practice or something we would add on to our regular practice?
Yeah, I think there's a good argument for both. Certainly some people, I would highly recommend that you add one of the Brahma Viharas onto your regular practice. And what most people do, certainly what that includes me, is to add either loving kindness or compassion or a combination of them. Some people add them at the beginning of the meditation. So if you're going to sit for 20 minutes, you might do 5 or 10 minutes of Brahma Vihara and then do a mindfulness practice. Other people put it at the end. So that's very beneficial. It's also incredibly beneficial to make the Brahma Viharas your primary practice. Just take a week, a month, a year. I know people who've taken 3 years, right? And that is what they practice. And the change that people who do that describe in their daily life is very profound. That the stress just, we just don't respond the same way, just stressors, right? That we're just more even-minded. Even though I might just be practicing loving kindness or compassion, my capacity, right, to be non-reactive is growing, right? And so I have more equanimity. So yeah, so either of those is good. And if you're so inclined, try both of them just for a period of time and just see what the benefits are. Right?
Elaborate on the strategies for non-reactivity. It is so relative. How is one non-reactive when one's partner is killed in an accident versus getting a flat tire? So I guess just the scale of the fact that
yeah,
relative.
To be non-reactive doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you're being numb. So to take the serious example of your partner being killed in a car accident, this is a profoundly sad thing, but you just let yourself feel sad. You're not running away from the dukkha of the sadness, right? You're not running away from the wanting it not to have happened. You're just being present with whatever your mind's giving you. That's all. Right? The opposite of that, which many of us do, no, all of us do some of the time, some of us do it a lot of the time, is just that we're blaming something else. We're not actually dealing with what's going on. We're busy being angry at the person who caused the accident, right? And we rob ourselves of the ability to just be present with the pain, with the dukkha. So to be non-reactive doesn't mean that things don't bother us. It means that we allow them to bother us. And we're not trying to push all that away. The activity is always about avoiding pain.
And not pushing it away, to me, feels like a really generous act of compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. An act of self-compassion for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's any more questions, but while I have you here, would you mind talking to us a little bit about your presentation in December? That you're going to be exploring the pandemic through the lens of Buddhist teachings and from the perspective of the Four Noble Truths, so people maybe could have an understanding of what to expect when we meet with you again.
So the Four Noble Truths is the fundamental teaching in all of Buddhism. I know it through the lens of the Theravada school the best, so I'll just talk about it in that frame. But there's a metaphor, a saying, a simile that they talk about, that the Four Noble Truths is like the elephant's footprint. It's the largest footprint in the jungle. Everything else has to fit inside. So every other teaching that the Buddha gave fits inside the Four Noble Truths. They are the core. And if we truly understand the Four Noble Truths, then we understand the entire teaching. So the Four Noble Truths are, the first Noble Truth is the Noble Truth of suffering, that life is suffering. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering, and the cause of suffering is craving. Basically, what that means is we suffer when we want things to be different than they actually are. And then the third noble truth is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, so that this is something that we can all experience momentarily. And when it is complete and always the case, it is the ultimate liberation, so that there is no more suffering. So it is the state of nibbana. So nibbana is a Pali word. The Theravada teachings are written all in Pali. They come from something called the Pali Canon, that everybody else uses some version of Sanskrit. So nirvana would be the word that many people would know. Nibbana and nirvana mean the same thing. Nirvana is Sanskrit, nibbana is Pali. And the fourth noble truth is the Noble Eightfold Path. So those are 8 steps, 8 processes. They're not linear, they're all happening concurrently, but there's 8 steps of mental development, right, that we need to go through in order to create the conditions where the dukkha can stop permanently.
Yeah, sorry, there was a question that popped up, but yes, I think that will be like a beautiful discussion and a great opportunity for us to get much more clarity. So I'm excited to know that you're going to be teaching that. And I think it's a great.
And my intention is to use the pandemic, right, as the field out of which we will look at the 4 noble truths. Yeah. Yes, I know we both got distracted by the chat. Question that came.
You stated that the Brahma-Vihara is a concentration practice. Can you outline how mindfulness insight practice is different?
Yeah. So a concentration practice is any practice where you limit what the focus of the meditation is about. So with the Brahma-Viharas, it's a pretty broad focus, but it's the focus of the Brahma-Vihara. And if my mind goes somewhere else, I'm just going to bring it back to the Brahma-Vihara. I'm not going to attend to the somewhere else. So that's what defines a concentration practice, right? So, the classic concentration practice is I just watch my breath, right? And I just ignore everything else. But whenever we have a fixed thing to attend to and ignoring everything else, that's a concentration practice. A mindfulness practice is when our concentration moves moment to moment. All right, so that the object that we are aware of will change on a very consistent basis. And when we first teach people mindfulness, we'll often recommend that they have an anchor. It could be the breath, could be something else, but it could be an anchor. Your breath could be the anchor. So you come back to the breath when you kind of get lost, right? Or when there's nothing else going on that's entertaining you. Then we move on to something called choiceless awareness, where we don't need that anchor anymore, right? Our awareness is just staying with whatever is most salient in the moment. Now, on a retreat, that we slow the world down. And so that's relatively easy to do. In daily life, it's much more complicated because there's always more than one thing happening. But what we do in daily life is we take our awareness to the thing that's most salient. And so the object of the awareness is continuously changing depending on the conditions. Where in concentration, that's not what's happening. So that's the fundamental difference. They do work together, and we need to use, and we may say, we practice mindfulness, but as we deepen our practice, we will need to be able to work with both of them. They'll interact with each other.
Mm-hmm. And we're building that consciousness, that to have that energy to know we are knowing. It's the
Right.
Inner awareness. Yeah. It's probably after our questions, I'll just put a final call out for it. But in the meantime, maybe did you want to just mention your website and where people can find out more about you and your teachings?
Yes, so the website is called bringingawareness-to-life.ca. it's a website for several things, but it is a website for all of my meditation work as well. There is a meditation group that meets on the first and third Wednesday of the month. And that the first sitting of the month is a general mindfulness or Vipassana sitting. And I give a Dhamma talk at the end of that sitting. And the third Wednesday of the month is always a Brahmavihara sitting. So it's always a guided 30-minute meditation. And then I give a Dhamma talk about some aspect of the Brahmaviharas. And so if people are new to meditation, that third Wednesday of the month, 7 p.m. on Zoom is a great place to start because you can just listen. Right?
Beautiful, beautiful. And I have to say, just watching you and being with you in this practice, the joy that you radiate when you teach it is really lovely to be around.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, oh great, it looks like Maya has put your website in the chat, and if anyone is interested in finding out more about those practices, they can find you. And of course, a reminder that they can sign up for your next talk on December 16th, either through our website or actually even in the at the Calgary Public Library. So if you want to just take a moment and bring your final words to our evening tonight, we just welcome your final thoughts.
I would invite everybody to end this evening by just taking a moment and really just see what resonated with you and just hold on to that. Just make that the starting point for whatever comes next. And really, even if it was just a flicker of, I don't know, contentment or happiness or whatever, really try to make the intention to go back and remember how it felt every day, 2 or 3 times every day, just for a second, right? So that it doesn't get lost, because then it becomes the seed that grows into something that is strong and stable and will get you through some of the hard times. It really helps build resilience for sure. And everybody has it. We all are capable of this, absolutely.
That's very reassuring. Thank you, Dr. Mahoney. Thank you. Thank you for a beautiful evening, all the wisdom that you brought to us in this very special practice. Very grateful for you tonight. And you'll see there's comments coming through to say the same. Thank you everyone for being here this evening, and I just want to again thank the Calgary Public Library and of course Maya for hosting us tonight. And I wanted to just suggest that if you feel called, a reminder that we are a nonprofit, volunteer-led group. We don't have any costs associated bringing our speakers to you other than our communications. So the communications that we put out on a regular basis, our website. So if you feel called to, if you'd like to support us through a donation, we would be happy and thankful for your support. Even $5 goes a long way. So you'll find a donate link on our website on the homepage. So if you would like to visit us, you'll see a link to the breathproject.org in the chat. So we would be appreciative of that. So thank you again, all of you, for being here tonight. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next event on December 1st. Maya, I'll turn it over to you.